I want to preface this by saying that I know how foolish we were that night. If we had just stayed home, none of this would have happened. But we didn't, and now I can't shake the feeling that something followed me back. It was late summer, the kind of night where the air is thick and buzzing with unseen things. My parents were out of town for the weekend, leaving me home alone. I wasn't one to throw parties or do anything reckless, but boredom makes you do stupid things. It started with a simple idea, sneaking out with my cousin Marcus just for the thrill of it. That thrill turned into something else entirely. Marcus was the one who suggested we check out the abandoned house at the edge of Hollow Creek. "No one's lived there for years," he said. "We'll be in and out." The house had always been a neighborhood mystery, a sagging two-story relic that stood alone, swallowed by weeds and ivy. Some people said it was haunted. Others claimed it was home to something worse. We should have listened, armed with nothing but our bikes and flashlights. We rode through the dimly lit streets, stopping just before the rusted gate. The house loomed before us, the window's black void staring into the night. The silence around it was unnatural, pressing in from all sides. Still, Marcus was determined. He found a side window with a broken latch, pushed it open, and climbed. Inside, I hesitated, but he waved me in, his grin flashing in the darkness. "Come on, don't be a wimp." Inside, the air was thick with decay. Our flashlights cut through the gloom, revealing overturned furniture, shattered glass, and walls covered in strange, childlike drawings. Stick figures with hollow eyes. Jagged symbols I didn't recognize. The floor creaked beneath our weight, the wood groaning in protest. Then we heard it. A faint shuffle. A creak. Footsteps from the second floor. "Did you hear that?" Marcus whispered, his voice tight. I nodded, frozen. The steps were slow, deliberate. Someone, or something, was up there. Probably just an animal, Marcus muttered, but his voice lacked confidence. The footsteps stopped. The air felt heavier, pressing against my chest. I wanted to leave, but Marcus was already creeping toward the staircase. The moment his foot touched the first step, something moved above us. A door creaked open. Then, the unmistakable sound of something dragging across the floor. A breath of icy air brushed against my neck. "We need to go," I whispered, gripping Marcus's arm. He hesitated, but the sound was getting closer. Something was coming down the stairs. We turned and ran, scrambling through the darkened hall, our breaths ragged. I reached the window first, shoving myself through and landing hard in the overgrown grass. Marcus wasn't as lucky. His foot caught on something and he fell, cursing under his breath. A deep, guttural sound echoed through the house. Not human, not animal. Something else. Marcus yanked himself free, his face pale, and dove through the window. We didn't look back. We ran, our bikes forgotten, our only thought to get as far away as possible. The night stretched endlessly before, our pounding footsteps lost in the dark. When we finally reached my house, we collapsed onto the porch, our chests heaving. "What the hell was that?" Marcus gasped, shaking his head. I couldn't answer. My mind was stuck on that sound, the slow, dragging movement, the way the air inside felt alive, watching. That night, as I lay in bed, the unease wouldn't leave me. My window was locked, the curtains drawn, but I felt it, the weight of something just outside. Then I heard it, a faint creak, a whisper of movement beyond the glass. Holding my breath, I turned my head ever so slightly and saw it. A shadow, shifting just beyond the window. Something had followed us home. They say the city never sleeps, but that's a lie. There's a point just past midnight when everything holds its breath. The streets turn quiet, the neon signs flicker like they're hesitating, and the last stragglers hurry home before they get swallowed by whatever crawls out of the dark. That was the time of night when he arrived. I worked the night shift at a convenience store on the outskirts of town, a rundown place wedged between a bus depot and a stretch of abandoned warehouses. The only customers I got after midnight were drunks looking for smokes or truckers grabbing coffee to stay awake on the highway. That night, the store was empty. No cars at the pumps, no voices in the distance. Just the hum of the refrigerator units and the buzz of the flickering fluorescent lights. I was restocking the counter display when I saw him through the glass doors. He was massive, easily over 6 feet, broad and solid, moving slow, dragging his feet like each step took effort. He wore a long coat, heavy and ragged, the kind you'd expect to see on a drifter. It looked stiff, like it had soaked up years of rain, sweat, and dirt. But what struck me first wasn't his size or his clothes. It was the way he carried himself. Most people, even the ones who've been beaten down by life, still move with some sense of purpose. Even if they're lost, they look like they're going somewhere. But he moved like he had already arrived. The automatic doors slid open and the smell hit me before he even stepped inside. I've smelled plenty of bad things, rotting garbage, moldy food, the sour stink of unwashed bodies. But this was different. It was thick and suffocating, a mix of decay and something deeper, something wrong. It clung to him like a second skin, heavy and sour, making my stomach lurch. He shuffled toward the counter and I forced myself to stay still. My gut told me to be careful. "Can I help you?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. He didn't answer right away. His eyes flicked over me, slow and deliberate. They were deep-set, shadowed, but I could feel them sizing me up. "I walked," he said finally. His voice was rough, like old leather dragged over gravel. I nodded, unsure how to respond. "Yeah?" Walked a long way. He reached up and pushed back the sleeve of his coat. His forearm was covered in scars, some old, some fresh, some looking like burns. And right in the center of it all was a jagged tattoo. A crude, uneven smiley face. The ink faded and smeared. "That's me," he muttered. His cracked lips curled slightly. "Happy." I swallowed hard. The name didn't fit. Nothing about him was happy. "All right," I said carefully. "You need something?" His stare didn't waver. The silence stretched, and I felt my pulse picking up. I had no idea what he wanted, and I wasn't about to ask. He stepped closer. The smell grew stronger. I forced myself not to move. "We've got food, drinks, cigarettes, whatever you need, man." His lips curled into something that wasn't quite a grin. "For me?" My mouth went dry. I reached under the counter where we kept the basket of expired goods, stuff we were supposed to toss but sometimes handed out to the homeless. I grabbed a few things, chips, a bottle of water, an old protein bar, and placed them on the counter. "On the house," I said, pushing the items toward him. "Long walk and all." He didn't take them, just stared. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator, units, the faint flicker of the lights above me. Time stretched, thick and heavy. Then, without a word, he reached out and picked up the bottle of water. "Kind," he murmured, though his tone made it sound more like an observation than a compliment. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. He turned, walking toward the door. His boots scuffed against the tile, leaving faint smudges behind. But just as he reached the threshold, he paused. Looked back. "I'll see you later," he said. The automatic doors slid open, and he was gone. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Just listened to the distant sound of his footsteps fading into the night. It wasn't until a few minutes later that I realized my hands were shaking. I told myself I wouldn't see him again, that he was just another drifter passing through, but deep down I knew better. A week passed, then 2, and then, on a night just like the first, he came back. This time, He didn't linger at the door. He walked straight in, heading toward the counter like he belonged there. Like I had been expecting him. I wasn't alone that night. My co-worker Mike was in the back stocking shelves, but that didn't make me feel any safer. Happy stopped in front of the counter, that same unsettling smile twitching at his lips. "I walked again," he said. I nodded slowly. "Where from?" His smile widened, but he didn't answer. Instead, he placed something on the counter. A single, crumpled train ticket. It was old, yellowed, the ink faded. The date printed on it was from 6 years ago. I stared at it, my stomach twisting. "Train never came," he said. His voice was quieter this time, almost thoughtful. So I kept walking. I looked up at him. Where were you going?" His eyes locked onto mine, and I felt something cold crawl down my spine. "Home," he said. Silence. The store felt smaller, like the walls were pressing in. Then, just as before, he turned and walked out. This time, I didn't wait. I grabbed my phone and followed him. But when I stepped outside, the lot was empty. No footprints, no movement. Nothing but the faint hum of the streetlights overhead. I stood there for a long time, staring down the empty road. And then, very faintly, from somewhere deep in the dark, I swore I heard the sound of a train whistle. A whistle that never should have been there. A whistle for a train that never came. I was 13 when I first saw him. It was autumn and the days were getting shorter, the evenings swallowed by a thick, creeping fog. My walk home from school took me along a winding rural road, bordered by fields that stretched into the distance, their edges disappearing into the mist. There were no sidewalks, just the cracked asphalt and the occasional flickering street lamp, humming like an insect in the gloom. I was used to walking alone. My house sat at the end of a long dirt driveway, beyond a stretch of skeletal trees. That day the fog was heavier than usual, wrapping around me like damp fingers. My footsteps echoed eerily, the sound swallowed as soon as I took another step. That's when I noticed him. A figure standing at the crossroads ahead, half hidden in the mist. He was tall, his clothes ragged, his face shadowed beneath the brim of a hat that looked too big for his head. Something about him made my skin crawl. Maybe it was the way he stood, too still, too focused. I kept walking, pretending not to notice. But as I passed, he spoke. "You're a pretty girl," he murmured. His voice was hoarse, like dry leaves scraping across pavement. "What's your name?" I ignored him, my heart thudding. "Where do you live?" he pressed. "I bet your folks aren't home yet, are they?" I walked faster. The road ahead curved into the fog, leading toward home. The air felt heavier, colder. Then his footsteps. Soft at first, then quicker. He was following me. My throat tightened. I could hear him closing the distance, his voice a sickly whisper. "Why won't you talk to me? That's not very nice." I gripped the straps of my backpack, forcing myself not to run. If I ran, he'd chase me. If I ran, I'd panic, and I needed to stay calm. Then he asked, "Do you have a phone?" I don't know why I answered. Maybe because I thought it would make him stop. Maybe because I was scared of what would happen if I didn't. "Yes," I lied. "Give me your number," he said. I hesitated. Then he smiled. I couldn't see much of his face, but I saw his teeth, yellowed and uneven, grinning too wide. My hands were shaking as I rattled off a string of fake digits. He nodded, his head tilting in an unnatural way. "I'll call you later," he said. I bolted. I didn't stop until I reached home, slamming the door behind me, heart hammering. I locked every door, checked every window, but he was gone. I told myself it was over. I was wrong. 4 months later, winter had set in. The fog came even earlier, thick and suffocating. I had nearly forgotten about the man until the day I heard the footsteps again. I was halfway home, my breath curling in the cold air, when I sensed it. A presence behind me. The same slow, deliberate steps, matching mine. I turned. There he was. His hat was gone, revealing a gaunt face, eyes sunken deep into his skull. His clothes were the same, tattered and stained. And his expression was pure fury. "You think you're smart?" he spat. "Giving me a fake number? You think you're better than me?" I froze. My mouth was dry. He took a step closer. I wanted to scream, to flag down a passing car, but the road was empty. My house was still a mile away, and I knew that if I let him get too close, I wouldn't make it home. Then, headlights. A truck was parked near the bend, 2 men standing. Beside it, I didn't hesitate. I ran straight toward them, my pulse roaring in my ears. They saw me. They saw him. One of them stepped forward, blocking the man's path. "Something wrong?" he asked. The man hesitated, then smirked. "She's my sister." He lied. I shook my head frantically. The men glanced at each other. "Yeah," one of them said. "I don't think so." The man's smirk faded. He turned as if to run, but they didn't let him. One grabbed him by the arm, the other shoved him back. "You don't go following kids home," one of them growled. I didn't stay to watch. I ran, sprinting all the way to my front door, locking myself inside. I don't know what happened to him. I don't want to know. All I know is that I never saw him again. But even now, when the fog rolls in thick and silent, I still feel it. That presence, that creeping, watching thing in the mist. And I wonder, was he ever really gone? I wasn't sure about taking the job, but I needed the money, and watching someone's house for a few days sounded easy enough. Just water some plants, feed the cat, maybe watch a little TV. That's what I thought. Until the owner, Mr. Eames, mentioned something I wasn't expecting. "Oh, by the way, my brother's upstairs," he said, tossing his suitcase in his car. I laughed, thinking he was joking. "Yeah, okay. Anything else?" He looked at me over his sunglasses and sighed. "I'm serious. My brother Alden lives up there. He doesn't come out much. Just leave food on the kitchen counter. He'll grab it when no one's around." That should have been my cue to leave, but I stayed. The first day was quiet. The house was huge, filled with heavy old furniture and paintings of people who looked like they'd never smiled a day in their lives. It smelled like wood polish and dust. I spent most of my time in the sunroom, flipping through my phone. Dinner. I left an extra plate on the counter like Mr. Eames had told me. When I checked later, the food was gone, but I never saw anyone take it. That night, as I was getting into bed, I heard footsteps upstairs. Fast, heavy ones, boom, 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 down the hall, down the stairs, then just as fast, boom, 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 back up again. A door slammed. I lay there frozen. What was he doing? Pacing. Running. I told myself it didn't matter. He was just a weird, quiet guy, no big deal. The next day was just as strange. I spent the afternoon outside on the patio trying to relax, but when I looked up at the second-floor window, my stomach dropped. Alden was standing there staring at me. The moment he realized I saw him, he ducked out of sight. I grabbed my things and went inside. That night I noticed his bedroom door was open. It had been closed the whole time I'd been there. Maybe he was finally warming up to me, I thought. I didn't check inside, but I should have. I had trouble sleeping. Every little sound made me tense up. I turned on a fan to drown out the noise, but then I heard something closer. a slow creaking sound like someone shifting their weight. Inside my room. My heart pounded. I sat up, barely breathing, and scanned the dark room. Then I saw him. Alden was sitting in the chair by the window just watching me. I barely had time to react before he moved fast. He lunged at me and pressed his hand over my mouth. "Shh," he whispered. Panic hit me like a train. I shoved him off with everything I had and bolted for the bathroom, locking the door behind me. My chest was heaving as I listened. Footsteps. Running. Down the hall. His door slammed shut. I stayed in the bathroom all night. At sunrise, I grabbed my bag and went straight outside. I waited on the front steps until Mr. Eames pulled into the driveway. He barely looked surprised when I told him what happened. He did something, didn't he? I wanted to scream at him. Instead, I just said, "You need to get him help." He nodded, handed me an envelope with extra cash, and went inside. I never asked what was wrong with Alden, and I never went back. But even now, sometimes, I wake up, in the middle of the night, feeling like someone's watching me. When I was a kid, my grandmother told me a story, just once. She never liked talking about it, and after I heard it, I understood why. She grew up in a small town, in a house with a wraparound porch. Next door lived an older woman, Mrs. Calloway. She was kind, always offering tea and cookies, and she smelled like lavender. Then one winter, Mrs. Calloway disappeared. Her son, who lived out of state, came back to look for her. He knocked on doors, put up missing posters, asked everyone if they'd seen her, but no one had. One evening, my grandmother was home alone. She made some tea, sat by the fireplace, and then, creak. She turned around. There, in her father's old rocking chair, sat Mrs. Calloway. She looked pale, her eyes distant, like she wasn't really there. "I was so cold," she whispered. "I just needed to get warm." Terrified, my grandmother ran next door and pounded on the door until Mrs. Calloway's son answered. She told him everything and dragged him back to the house. But when they got to the living room, the chair was empty. Mrs. Calloway was gone. The next day, they found her body in the cellar of her house. She had tripped and hit her head on a pile of firewood. She had been dead for nearly a week, but my grandmother had seen her the night before. She swore she wasn't imagining it, and after that, no one ever sat in that rocking chair again.